change here, we can change.
Yes, and this city
if
is
we
a good
can
city
do
for
that.
Has the intensity of the demonstrations and protests here in the Tri-Cities, and I guess maybe particularly in Johnson City, surprised you in any way?
No, not really. People are tired of division. They're tired of people, in particular politicians, using cynical ploys to divide the American people. They're tired of lack of opportunity, economic inequality, police brutality. They want to live dignified lives. And so this issue that began in the past week or so in Minneapolis is resonated with Americans all across the country, including here.
Is it a little bit different here in terms of the kinds of things that people in authority are saying, and yet is there still something that we need to learn about the way language is used, even if it's not quite as divisive?
Well, I think around here, Mayor Brock has done a fairly good job of trying to handle this appropriately. But listen, we have politicians all across the country who are going to use the protests in order to win votes on both sides. You're going to have other people who are going to try to use it so that they can divide others and to inflame others. And we've seen that on a national level.
What could happen next with those who have this energy right now to channel it into something that could help continue to, or can move the ball forward?
Well, I think it is a beautiful sight to see these young people of all different backgrounds here in the region making their voices heard, expressing themselves, using their First Amendment rights, assembling peacefully. I think that's a wonderful thing. And so what we have to do now is to make sure that we don't lose that passion, right? And to make sure that these young people have their righteous energy directed in a positive direction and not splintered apart by forces that are against what they stand for.
Let's talk about civil disobedience a little bit. Is there a middle ground there where people can break the law and do it in a way that's not violent? And is that helping catch more attention, like here, for instance?
Well, I think it's important to, abide by the law wherever you can, right? What's most important here is nonviolence, right? I don't believe that I think it's a false choice between, either you're on the side of the law or you're on the side of lawbreakers or breaking the law. That's just not true. There's an opportunity here for powerful leaders in the region to harness that energy to have a positive outcome, right? Are they going to be in the streets indefinitely with protests? Chances are they're probably not, right? That's just never happened. We're not still protesting the Stamp Act, right? Hundreds of years later. But they are righteous in what they're fighting for. And so it's incumbent upon law enforcement and powerful leaders to give a wide berth there.
Yesterday, another thing that was said when a reporter asked about the means by which one can, get the streets closed off,
right.
The answer was, well, here's the process for doing that.
Right.
And it seemed like, that to get to that point, obviously a lot of the energy would have dissipated by then.
Well, I think it's a typical response from not in necessarily a negative or positive way, but just a typical response from a local government official, right? Which is, this is the process by which you can go about doing X, Y, or Z. And that's perfectly fine on one hand. But there are times where you can be, I think, a little more selective in how you enforce that, right? These protests have been peaceful. The aim has been peaceful. They are simply trying to be heard, and they should be given, that opportunity. Now, to that end, law enforcement has a compelling interest, rightfully so, in maintaining some semblance of order, right? and for the protection, especially of protesters, right, so that they're not abused by anybody. But I would encourage, a little bit of latitude here when it comes to this, because we want these people to remain engaged. Over time, we want every citizen in Johnson City and Washington County to take ownership of the community. It's better that way. It's better when people feel committed and feel like they have a voice and that they can make positive changes within the community. If I were an elected official or if I was a city official, I would think about it this way. This is an opportunity not just to address issues such as police brutality or racism, but this is an opportunity to bring people who are largely been, excluded from the power network historically in this country and locally, to bring them into the fold and make them a part of the solution. People will respond positively when you give them that opportunity.
Protesters downtown in the street shouting, "Kneel with us," and a police officer actually kneeling and another one kneeling.
Yeah.
Is that something that is worthwhile as an addition to staying on the sidewalk and staying within the law, particularly if it is done peacefully?
The idea of them taking a knee with them is terrific. We make false distinctions that you're either on the side of law and order or you're on the side of the protesters. To my mind, as a political historian, one of the worst things in society is to have ineffectual and brutal enforcement of law, right? Because it undermines everything that Americans believe in about the system, right? That it's just, that it's fair, that everybody is treated equally. And I saw a Johnson City police officer last night in front of City Hall, a couple of them, really sincerely, honestly engaging people. I think it makes, and I'm not a police officer, but I think it makes their job easier when they can develop those types of relationships. And it's why law enforcement departments across the country are increasingly looking at things like de-escalation. It's why they're sending officers into various communities so that they can not just have a physical presence for the purposes of fighting crime, but also so that they can build relationships with these people. And in doing so, not just solve crime, right, but prevent crime. And so, to me, it's a powerful symbol of a person in a position of power, which is a law enforcement officer, embracing somebody who at that moment is rather powerless in comparison, and building a bridge that can be, continually built upon for the betterment of the community.
What should you do when you're getting arrested, when you're protesting, to keep it peaceful?
I would encourage protesters to give their name, ID, to cooperate to the extent that they can. If there's going to be violence, it should not come from them. When we think about the civil rights movement, why it was so successful is because Dr. King and others were able to instill nonviolent rhetoric and tactics and strategy into the movement. And so that took discipline. And we saw civil rights protesters beat without responding. That takes incredible moral courage.
If they're seen as doing it the way you've talked about, is that actually going to enhance their message?
I think it strengthens their message that they are committed to nonviolence, that they want positive change, and that they want to be a part of the solution. The vast majority of protesters just want to be heard. Now, it may be profane at times, right? It may be loud, but that's okay. That's American as apple pie.